And now, with your 2009 commencement address, Senator John Kerry.
Well, umbrellas and ponchos, and somewhere underneath them, members of the class of 2009, guests, friends. The view from up here is extraordinary, and I appreciate Chancellor Motley just laying the blame for your being out here in the rain on me. All I can say is, if it had to rain, thank God it started raining before I stood up to speak. Because I can imagine the headlines otherwise, folks. Kerry brings rain on festivities at UMass. Now, I know it's wet. Look, I have never had more power than this as a United States Senator, because now I am all that stands between you and your degrees and getting dry. So I promise you to respect that, and I'm going to try and sort of edit through here spontaneously a little bit so that you get your degrees and get dry as we move along. Man, that's a message. I mean, you know, it says principal address. Maybe I should just stand up here and tell you where I live and sit down. That'll be it. Anyway, it's a great honor for me to be here with the fellow conferees, honorary degrees today. I can't think of a more distinguished group of colleagues to share this with. Joe Kennedy, Sister Margaret Leonard, and Edward Moses, and the class of 2009 ought to be super proud of those three and their accomplishments and the role model they set for everybody. Joe has, as was mentioned, carried on the tradition of fighting for those who struggle to get a fair shake, and he has been courageous, creative, and steady in that effort, my friends. And Sister Margaret, as we all know, has spent a lifetime making sure that we all see the value and worth in everyone, and she has been inspirational in that effort. And Edwin, well, Edwin is fast, very, very fast. Almost as fast as Chancellor Motley was back when he was playing hoops for Jim Calhoun at Northeastern. And I have to tell you, Edwin also, as you heard, does remarkable work in some 46 countries, changes the lives of people. But I've always wondered why he didn't run for office, because he spent a lot of his track career running around in a circle as fast as he could, ending up right back where he started, which is pretty much a typical day in Washington, D.C., folks. Also, I am really proud, and you could tell from the comments of Chancellor Motley in introducing me, I'm so proud to be here with Marine Corps veteran Dominic Powell, this year's recipient of the John F. Kennedy Award. I want to thank her for sharing with us that remarkably candid view of the values that drove her through high school. But I thank her for the courage of the comments that followed. I know that Dominic wants to run for public office, and all I can say is, folks, I hope it's the House of Representatives for a while, not the United States Senate. I'm an old sailor, and I learned a long time ago not to tangle with a UMass Boston Marine. Now, I've learned a little bit about you guys. And your class presents some interesting statistics. 35% of you are going to go on to grad school. 7% are going to enter military service or community service or public service. And 8% of you are Star Trek fans who will soon be back living in your parents' basement. Just kidding. I think. The fact is that you are an amazing class. Some of you, like Dominique, are ready to answer the call to service that inspired my generation. Others, like Christian Sepulveda, an immigrant who's been working as a waiter while going to school, is going on to graduate school, and that is the story of so many of you. And still others, like Paul Browdy and Chris Pierce, have dreams of becoming professional beer pong players with the chance to win $50,000 at tournaments. So, Paul and Chris, I simply want to caution you about that. It's one thing to be an amateur beer ponger, but I warn you, if you keep it up, you might become United States senators. Now, whatever you decide to do, and this has been said earlier by Chancellor Motley, but I want to repeat it because it's one of the things I find most impressive about graduations and about particularly the numbers of first-time graduates for families here. Every single one of you are here today because of the love, support, and fierce hope of the parents that you and your families, that you will live your dreams through this education that they've helped you secure, and we do thank them especially for what they have sacrificed and given in order to reach this day. It also occurred to me that since some of those parents are part of my generation, I want to just clarify a few things very, very quickly. First, the discovery last week of a 47-million-year-old fossilized missing link has no connection to our generation, no matter how much you think it does. Second, not everyone in our generation experimented with drugs, although between Flomax, Ambien, and Viagra, now we do. And as to the myth that everybody in our generation is wealthy, let me make it clear, not after this recession and your tuition. I know there is also an idea that we are unbelievably technologically challenged, which is simply ridiculous because some of us can text as many as 3 characters a minute and 2 while driving. And finally, I know I have heard this from people, there's this notion that we're not diverse, that we're really all the same and we share the same views on everything. I just want you to know I will remember to tell that to Rush Limbaugh and Keith Olbermann next time I see them. Now, let me try to get to the serious part of the moment, and I will try to truncate it and put it into a comprehensive but yet shortened sense of where we're heading here. As you know, we're coming together in a time of crisis. Now, I'm not, speaking of Big Papi's slump. This is a moment of great economic uncertainty. You're graduating into a transformational time. In fact, this may be a unique graduation where, for once, it is safe to say that the same thing is on the minds of parents and students with the same sense of anxiety. And that is the anxiety about jobs and the economy and the increasing tensions of the world we live in. Everyone is particularly worried about the economic future. And even the jobs that are available today don't seem to offer the same kind of security that they did before. But the truth is, every generation has faced a similar kind of uncertainty. And no graduating class in our country's history has been without its own set of unique challenges. In fact, our generations are not really that different. My generation came of age amid war, political strife, and economic turmoil, and so is yours. I graduated from college in 1966, the year Time magazine chose as its Man of the Year not a man or a woman, but a generation of men and women. The young generation of Americans, 25 years old and under. Time dubbed us the Now generation, and even predicted that we would not only land on the moon, but we would also cure cancer and the common cold, lay out blight-proof, smog-free cities, enrich the undeveloped world, and no doubt, write fini to poverty and war. So they were off a bit. But here's the important lesson of that label and of that moment in history. Each new generation of Americans has always attempted the impossible And time and again, they have succeeded. One generation plants a tree and the next gets the shade. So we do live in challenging times. But the biggest message I want to give you today, and I remember sitting, not quite as you are today in the wet, but sitting anticipating a degree and waiting for the future, just as you are today. I'm here to tell you that there is no reason to let this challenge overcome you and to let the sense of despair or futility that some feel somehow overwhelm. No reason to hunker down and buy into the easy excuse that changing what you don't like or making happen what you want to have happen is somehow out of reach or bigger than you are or impossible to achieve. Everything about our country tells us differently, even if sometimes the change comes slow and comes hard. In 2000, an unknown community organizer who had just lost a campaign for Congress went to Los Angeles to attend the Democratic National Convention. He wanted to get his mind off his troubles, but his troubles followed him there. When he tried to rent a car at the LA airport, his credit card was denied. When he finally got to the convention, he had no credentials. The good news is the problem with his credit card got straightened out. And last January, he notified MasterCard that he has changed his address to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. President Barack Obama doesn't have to rent a car anymore, and he gives out the credentials. President Obama spoke about this credit card problem right here on this campus 3 years ago. His message to UMass Boston's class of 2006 was that America is an unlikely place, a country built on defiance of odds, on a belief in the impossible. Today, with your graduation, some of you are realizing just what an unlikely place America is. Today, with your graduation, some of you are in defiance of the odds. And today, with your graduation, some of you are achieving what some still don't believe is possible. I had the privilege of delivering the commencement speech here in 1988. I hate to say it, but quite a few of you had not yet been born. I tell you today, the world that we live in is one that the class of 1988 would have a lot of difficulty even imagining. You can start with Barack Obama being elected president, but also consider this. There are 169 Latino students graduating today, the largest group of Latino graduates in the school's history. And they and you are graduating into a world where a Puerto Rican girl who grew up in public housing in the Bronx will become the next Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. And the best thing about a story like Sonia Sotomayor's is that it's not shocking. It's not even surprising anymore. We've changed so much in a few years that it is now simply, in a word, American. So every challenge presents its opportunities. And I want to convince you that even on the job front, even on our economy, there are going to be opportunities ahead that no one can completely foresee now. But I believe this with all my heart. I've never been more confident about our future, frankly, because we're on the cusp of a major transformation in our economics and in our relationship with the global world. When the class of 1988 entered the workplace, there was no such thing as Google, Blackberries, iPods, or American Idol. And I'll tell you in the same way as I tell you with absolute confidence, despite the unemployment rate being at a 25-year high, why do I say we're on the brink of this change? Well, let me tell you, Joe Kennedy will agree with me that it's pretty good in public life if you can pass a law, set out in a direction, and just accomplish the basic goal. That's pretty good. It's even better if you get what we call a twofer, two good things out of one policy. It's rare that you get more. Well, in the joint challenges of our economy and of global climate change, we're actually looking at a fourfer or a fivefer. if we make the right decisions. I'm not exaggerating when I say to you that meeting the challenge of global climate change is every single bit as important as it was meeting the challenge and is today of nuclear proliferation. And the benefits will in fact be felt in far more tangible and immediate ways in terms of our standard of living and our way of life. The fact is that at least a minimum, and most likely much more than 10 to 15% of all the jobs that will be created in the next 20, 25 years will be clean energy jobs, so-called clean jobs, green jobs, jobs that sustain our planet instead of threatening it. And I will tell you that revolution, in order to be successful to stave off climate change, has to happen at a rate 3 times faster than the Industrial Revolution. So that means we're staring at an opportunity to transform our economy. And just think about it this way. The internet that helped to grow Massachusetts and provided unprecedented wealth in this country, that internet was a $1 trillion market with about 1 billion users today. Guess what? The energy market is a $6 trillion market with 4 billion users today, and millions of people who still don't have electricity, still don't have clean water, for whom the opportunities of a market are enormous. So jobs, good jobs, long-term jobs, jobs that stay here in America, jobs that pay better, jobs that you can't export. That is primary and first of the benefits that comes if we engage in this transformation. We also, how many of you know that the greatest cause of children's hospitalization in the summer in America is in fact air quality induced asthma attacks? So if our energy is homegrown and our energy is clean, we wind up reducing the cost of health care because we reduce the particulates, lead, mercury, sulfur, all of the particulates in the air. We wind up with better health, less cost to taxpayers, and we have a healthier nation. And of course, no small accomplishment, we clean up our lakes and our rivers and our streams, and we reduce the poisons that fill and fall from the sky, and many of which literally contribute to cancer as they saturate the food chain that we rely on. And no small accomplishment if we reduce poverty with breakthrough technologies for electricity and clean water in thousands of communities that have neither. And in doing so, we live up to our generational responsibility to be good stewards of the earth and leave it to the future in better shape than we were loaned it. UMass, as you heard earlier, is playing an important role in this. Its chemistry department was the first in the world to offer a PhD in green chemistry. But we're going to have to do a great deal more in order to make this happen. Just one quick example and I'll wrap up. My wife and I bought, and I regret that we actually drive a Tahoe hybrid here in Massachusetts, but we bought a Prius the other day because it has a battery and the hybrid ability, and we don't have that yet to that degree here in this country, so that we can actually get 170 miles to the gallon. I can play a game driving up to the Capitol in Washington where I try to see how many few seconds I can actually have the engine cut in and figure out if I can get up there on the battery alone. I've had the car, we've had the car for several months now. I haven't filled it up once yet. This is so every American could be driving 170 miles to the gallon, and they will be in the future. And in the making of those cars and in the making of those batteries designed by A123 in Watertown, Massachusetts, we will create the jobs of the future. And we're currently negotiating to have those batteries built, not in China where they're built today, but built in Detroit so we can keep the industry here in America. So I just close by saying to you that I know there's an inclination to feel, well, some of this stuff is out of my reach. I can't affect it, but you're wrong. You're wrong. So many of you affected it by making the change you made last year in the election. And the truth is that I remember back in 1970 when people snickered when you talked about the environment. They laughed at you. They didn't know what it meant. But then suddenly on one day in April, of 1970, 20 million Americans came together, angry about the poison in their wells and their water, and literally rivers, a river in Ohio that would light on fire. And they said, we're going to change this. And they went out on what became known as Earth Day, and they translated that into targeted efforts for an election. They targeted the 12 worst votes in the United States Congress on the environment, and in the next election, 7 of the 12 were defeated. And the message that was sent as a result of that was change was demanded by people. It came from the grassroots, not from the leaders in Washington. And the result was we passed the Clean Air Act. We passed the Safe Drinking Water Act. We passed the Marine Mammal Protection Act. We passed and created the EPA. We didn't even have an environmental protection agency until the people demanded it. What we need to do today is remember about John Kennedy, whose library, as you heard and know from your familiarity here all these years, such a symbol to America just down the street here. And when he talked about the torch being passed to our generation, he could just as easily have been talking about your generation. We aren't all called to storm the beaches of Normandy or to go to Kaysan or to Baghdad. We aren't all called to Little Rock or to Selma or to Memphis. But we are all called to the legwork of democracy. Joe Kennedy's father, Bobby, once remarked that the world demands the qualities of youth, the qualities of imagination, courage, and an appetite for adventure, qualities we see so clearly in your generation. Now, you are the now generation. And I ask you to go out of here with all of the energy and all of the hope and all of the enthusiasm and all of the knowledge that the University of Massachusetts has gifted you with. Take this fight to our country and to the world. We need you, and we will transform not just our economy, but life on this planet itself. Thank you, and God bless you all.